Namaste, good morning, and welcome to the Vedanta Society of Greater Houston and our class on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Om Sarva Jiva Pavanashakaranam Bhaveshwaram Swikritang cha garbhavasa deha pashamidrisham Ya pitam swalilaya cha yena divya jivanam Ya pitam swalilaya cha yena divya jivanam Tannamami Deva Deva Ramakrishnam Ishwaram Om Shri Vivekanandari Satchishya Supujitaya Shri Sharada Devya Virata Sevitaya Shri Ramakrishna Paramahamsaya Avatar Varishtaya Chate Namaha. We salute Sri Ramakrishna, God of gods and Lord of existence, who of his own free will took on human birth and lived a luminous life of divine play for the destruction of human ills. We salute that avatara, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, who was worshipped by pure-hearted disciples like Vivekananda, and who is ceaselessly served by Sri Sharada Devi, the Divine Mother herself. Om Tavakatamritam Tapta Jivanam Kavibhiriditam Kalmashapaham Shravanamangalam Shrimadatam Bhuvi Grinanti Ye Bhurida Janaha. O Lord, your nectar-like words are praised by the wise and full of auspiciousness. They destroy the curse of evil, bring good to those who hear them, and bring new life to those who are scorched by the ills of worldly existence. Magnanimous indeed are they who spread your message. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us all. So we'll continue our reading where we left off last time, and that was, we were on September 22nd, 1883, and near the bottom of page 292. So Sri Ramakrishna, it was a Saturday, September 22nd that year, and so a number of devotees were there, it being a weekend. So Sri Ramakrishna was in his room, talking to Ishan and others. Now and then, Ishan invited Hajra to his house. Hajra had a craze for outward purity. Sri Ramakrishna often discouraged him in this. So of course, Hajra was his nephew or a distant relative, master to Ishan. Let me tell you another thing. Don't be over fastidious about outward purity. Once a sadhu felt thirsty. A water carrier was carrying water in a skin water bag and offered the water to the holy man. The sadhu asked if the skin was clean. The carrier said, "Revered sir, my skin is perfectly clean, but inside your skin are all sorts of filthy things. That is why I can ask you to drink water from my skin. It won't injure you." By your skin, the carrier meant the body, the belly, and so forth. So here, Sri Ramakrishna is telling this to Ishan because Ishan was associating with Hajra, and Hajra had a fastidiousness about purity. every social custom, every social observance has a reason for its existence. It might have outlived its reason, but it has a reason for its existence, and also it can be overdone. And so the insistence in the Hindu society on physical purity for doing ritual and all of that, that's a good thing. And that, as it's explained in the Yoga Sutras, one of the niyamas is shaucha, that is outward and inward cleanliness, that you have to have both. So that's a good thing. But of course, the insistence on outward purity, that can become a washing mania, and that you see plenty of also, where people always feel impure and are overly fastidious. So that's why Sri Ramakrishna is telling Ishan, since he was associating with Hajra, he may pick up some of this fastidiousness from Hajra. So Sri Ramakrishna, Swami Vivekananda, the Holy Mother, all of them were against that over fastidiousness. But from that, we shouldn't conclude that they weren't particular about basic physical purity, that they were insistent on. In fact, Swami Vivekananda, as we know, he, in his letters and especially in his letters and conversations, he criticized that taking religion to the kitchen, where being religious means you eat certain things and you don't eat certain things. And he was very critical of that over attention to food in the spiritual life. But at the same time, he said in his rules for the order that brahmacharyans, those who are the novices in the order, they should observe all of the purity rules concerning food, because there's a reason for those. What Swamiji was against was people putting all of their emphasis on that and forgetting the higher principles of religion, and thinking that I'm religious if I don't eat food that's been touched by so and so and so and so and so and so, then that makes me pure because I didn't eat food touched by these people. And I didn't eat these substances and I ate those substances and so forth. No, that's not what makes us spiritual. The observance of purity of food, that's a help. It's not the essence of spirituality. So Holy Mother heard one of her bothersome relatives, I think it was Nalini, was very fastidious about purity. And so Holy Mother scolded her several times, and you see in her conversations, for that over fastidiousness about purity. And so Holy Mother said, look at Tarak, meaning Swami Shivananda, who at that time was manager of Belur Mutt. Said, look at Tarak. He touches his, pets the dog on the way to the shrine and just sprinkles a little Ganges water on his hand. And Nalini almost had a heart attack, thinking, what is this? He should at least take a full bath and change clothes. That's the minimum that he should do after touching a dog. But Holy Mother said, you just know, he would just sprinkle a little Ganges water on his hand. So, again, the purity is especially when dealing with articles of worship, and then with our own eating habits and things, all of that is good. But that should be sort of like we brush our teeth. We don't think about brushing our teeth all the time, and we don't every 5 minutes think, oh, I've got to go brush my teeth again. No, it's just something that you do because you do it. And so with observations about the food and observations about ritual purity and all of that, they should be internalized so that it's just sort of automatic, but it shouldn't become a washing mania. So then Sri Ramakrishna says, have faith in the name of God. Then you won't need even to go to holy places. And then he's saying, intoxicated with divine fervor, why should I go to Ganga, Gaya, Kashi, Kanchi, or Prabhas, so long as I can breathe my last with Kali's name upon my lips? And so that, of course, is a very famous Bengali song, Gaya Ganga Prabhashadi, Kashi Kanchi Ke Bachai. Yes, I got stuck there in the middle. That's a very well-known song, and one that I know well also, a beautiful song. So the idea is that if you have faith in the name of God, then every place becomes holy. Wherever you chant the name of God, that becomes holy. And that's why at our open house at the retreat on Sunday, I wanted us to begin with some silent meditation. Then we had a guided meditation, but first a silent meditation for everyone to chant their mantra, because that's what makes a place holy. Ishan remained silent. Master to Ishan, tell me if you have any more doubts. Ishan, you said everything when you spoke of faith. Yes, what a beautiful statement. You said everything when you spoke of faith. Master, God can be realized by true faith alone, and the realization is hastened if you believe everything about God. The cow that picks and chooses its food gives milk only in driblets, but if she eats all kinds of plants, then her milk flows in torrents. Now, that's a very interesting statement. First, that God can be realized by true faith alone. What I mean by an interesting statement is the one about the cow and the food. But first, let me go back to this. God can be realized by true faith alone. Then I'll come to that. So Sri Ramakrishna would often say that just through longing one can realize God, and here he's saying that just by true faith one can realize God. So, true faith, what does that mean? All of us have the power of faith inside of us. Faith is something that everyone contains from childhood. But as we grow up, we gradually learn that there's certain things I shouldn't have faith in. There are people that I shouldn't believe. I've said, I tell this story once in a while. I haven't told it here for a long time. That when I was a child, my mother would read me stories, as my mothers do, a book of fairy tales and so forth. So one of the tales in one of the books she would read to me sometimes was about a young princess who believed everything that anyone told her. And her father was very upset. He tried to convince her, no, you can't believe everybody, because not everyone is telling the truth. And so she couldn't understand it. But whatever anyone told her, she would believe it. And her father realized that that could get her into serious trouble someday. So he asked his ministers and courtiers and others to try to convince her. Nothing worked. So then he offered a prize in the city, posted a sign in the city saying that anyone who can convince my daughter not to believe anything and everything will receive such a huge reward. So various people came and tried, and they had no luck. She still believed everything everyone said. Finally, a wise man wandering through the city on his way elsewhere, he saw the post, and he came to the palace and said, I think that I can help. So the king said, everyone has tried. It's no use. I've given up. He said, well, let me try. And so the king said, well, there's nothing to lose. I'll let you try also, but I'm at the point of giving up now. So this wise man sat with the girl for 2 days, trying to convince her, talking to her about why one can't believe everything anyone says. It didn't work. And so finally he got so frustrated, he got angry and said, you are a fool, and your father is an even greater fool for trying to get someone to convince you. And she said, no, my father's not a fool. He's a good man. And so with that, he won the prize unwittingly. He had given up by that time. But so that when I heard that from my mother, I couldn't understand the story at all. I thought, why can't you believe everybody? Again, I was just a little kid, so I thought that she was a good person. She believed everybody because she was a good person. It made no sense to me. Later, of course, I realized through many experiences that no, you can't believe everybody. But that shows that all of us come into the world with tremendous power of faith. And gradually we're taught that we can't believe everybody. We can't believe so many people. The things that, one of the first things that I remember being shocked at was how my grandfather would get upset with practically every commercial that came on television. I would say, "Oh, that's nonsense. That's great," and that also I couldn't understand at first. Gradually, I understood that advertising is meant to exaggerate and sometimes to out and out tell lies in favor of their product. So gradually we learn that. But the problem is that we learn it too well. and we don't know where we can put our faith. We become suspicious of people. And some people lose the ability to have faith in anything or anyone. And so much of religious life, spiritual life, is learning where I can put my faith and where I shouldn't put my faith. In fact, Vedanta doesn't say have faith in everything. I'll come to what Sri Ramakrishna says about having faith in everything about God. But Vedanta doesn't say have faith in everything. In fact, it says that you can't have faith in any of this. None of this can you have faith in. But you can have faith in God, because God is the unchanging reality, that which will never abandon us, that which, and I say that to avoid having to say he or she, because it's both and beyond both. But that which is eternal, that which never changes, that which never abandons us, that which never leaves us. Many people think that when they're going through a rough time, they think that God is testing me. No, it's not really that God is testing us. It's that karma is coming to us. We're facing karma. We're having to get through it. And we have to get to the other side of it on our way to God. But it's not that God is putting a banana peel in front of you to see if you step on it and slip and fall down. We slip and fall down. We had some karmic thing to work out. But God is on the other side of all of the banana peels of life, waiting for us to come. And so there we can have full faith. So Sri Ramakrishna says that faith is enough. If we have faith, then we have everything. M was asked late in his life, long after, decades after Sri Ramakrishna had passed away, what was the thing that you gained most from Sri Ramakrishna? And he said, faith. So you would think that someone like M, who himself became a great saint, he would have said, well, through his grace, I've realized God. Through his grace, I have seen God. Through his grace, I had his company and all of that. No, he said that the thing that he got most was faith. So for us, faith means the belief that something is there that we haven't yet seen. We haven't seen God, but we believe that God is. And so that faith, to be strong, has to be faith which either some people are born into life with a deep faith in God, and nothing shakes their faith in God. The rest of us, we develop faith in God over time. And that often comes through questioning and doubting and so forth. But faith has to be something which is a deep conviction, not just, when I was a kid, I used to hear, people still say it, but I used to hear it when I was a kid. I'm out of those circles now, going to church and all of that, but I would hear people say that whether God exists or not, who knows? But I go to church and I believe in God as an insurance policy, because if God exists, I want to be on the right side of him, so that when I die, I go to the right place. And if he doesn't exist, well, it doesn't matter anyway. So, no, that's not faith. And faith doesn't just mean, well, my parents told me, and their parents told them, and their parents told them, and so who knows? But I just accept it because it's more difficult to think about it. I don't want to think about it, so it's easier just to accept it. No, that's not faith either. Faith means, as Rabindranath Tagore said in his beautiful words, that faith is the early morning bird that sings before the first light of dawn. So the early morning bird knows that the sun is rising. It hasn't seen any signs of the rising sun yet. Not even the first ray has appeared on the horizon. But the bird knows that the sun is going to rise, and so it begins to sing. So that's a beautiful expression of what real faith means. Real faith means gradually it comes to us over time. We begin to develop a deep faith that we know that God is. We have no doubts. We haven't seen God, but we know that God is. Everything in our life, everything in our mind, everything in our heart, everything in our understanding is pointing in that direction, that God is. It's the only thing that makes sense, the only thing that appeals to us. And so then we have a deep faith. And if once we have that, then other things will come of themselves. That's the first thing that we need, is that deep faith. Of course, that's a big thing, so I shouldn't say it's the first thing we need. No, it's not the first thing we need to enter the door of religion, but it is the first stable step. where once we have succeeded in getting that, then we're on firm ground. Then the rest begins to come to us. Then what we have to be careful to do is to foster the faith and not weaken it. Once we begin to feel that kind of faith, then everything that we do that advances that faith is good. Everything that weakens it is to our own detriment. So God can be realized by true faith alone. And the realization is hastened if you believe everything about God. Now that's a strange statement. If you realization is helped along if you believe everything about God. So what does that mean? Well, we have to see what he says further. He says, the cow that picks and chooses its food gives milk only in driblets. But the cow that eats all kinds of plants, is not picky about its food, then it gives milk in torrents. So the idea is that, well, I like Krishna, but I hate Ram, and I can't stand Shiva, and even with Krishna, it's only the Vrindavan Krishna that I like. I don't like the Gita Krishna and the Mahabharata Krishna. That I don't like that, and I only like doing puja and things like that. I don't like bhajans, and I don't like this. I don't like that. I just like these things. Then that's like the cow that only nibbles at a few plants and won't eat freely. And so if we believe everything about God, means that if we have that orientation towards God and we believe in all of the different ideas of God, then wherever we find any idea about God, we find food, like the cow eating all kinds of plants. It doesn't mean that you believe everything about God that any fool tells us. No, it doesn't mean that. But it means that everything that comes to us about God from a legitimate source, from a spiritual source, from whatever tradition, it doesn't matter. But anything about God that speaks to us of the reality of God, that's good. Once Sri Ramakrishna, and it's recorded in the Gospel, he was asked what he thought of the Theosophists. And so Sri Ramakrishna said, I don't know anything about the Theosophists, but if they say that realization of God is the purpose of life, then I'm for them. So that was his. So again, it doesn't mean believe anything and everything that anybody tells you, because there are all sorts of stupid things that are said about God. Many stupid things that are said about God. But any legitimate source, anyone who has experience of God from any direction, then what they say comes to us as food. So, and the realization is hastened if you believe everything about God. Then he continues, once I heard a story. A man heard the command of God that he should see his ideal deity in a ram. He at once believed it. It is God who exists in all beings. And so there are various stories in Hinduism and in Buddhism, especially in those two religions, especially because they share the same roots. The idea that God, well, in Buddhism, there's no idea of God, but there's the idea of enlightenment being present everywhere. And so in Hinduism, of course, there's the idea of God being everywhere. And so that can be seen and can be realized through anything. So this man who heard that he should think of his chosen ideal as a ram, he did that and saw God in the ram. A guru said to his disciple, it is Ram alone who resides in all bodies. A disciple was a man of great faith. One day a dog snatched a piece of bread from him and started to run away. He ran after the dog with a jar of butter in his hand and cried again and again, "Oh, Ram, stand still a minute. That bread hasn't been buttered." So that's a delightful story. And one could think, well, it's a delightful story that someone thought up, and probably someone did think it up. But it's true, literally true, because we have the example of Pauhari Baba, who was meditating in the inner part of his cave when he heard a disturbance in the main hall of the cave. He used to go into an inner recess that was hidden to practice his meditation. But he heard some disturbance, so he came out of his cave, came out of the inner recess, and saw that a thief was gathering up all of his worship vessels because they're made of copper and brass and they could be sold. So the thief, realizing that he was apprehended, he dropped everything and ran away to keep from getting caught. And so Pahari Baba, he gathered up the bundle that the thief was making and dropped. He gathered up the bundle, took it in his hand, and ran after the thief and caught up with the thief and said, "Oh Lord, here you've forgotten these, please." And as I've said, whenever I mention that story, that's not something that he did because he thought I should do it. Or let's see, God exists in everybody, so God must exist in the thief. And so the thief is God, and he dropped the thing, so I should run after him and give these back to him. And no, it was because he saw God in everybody, everything. He saw God in the thief. And so it was a spontaneous act and a genuine act from his heart without any ratiocination going into it. Another time, he was bitten by a snake, and everyone was worried for his health. And he said, "It was just a messenger from my beloved." And the snake bite didn't do him any harm. Probably the snake had either it was not poisonous, because non-poisonous snakes bite also, or else it had already exhausted its poison on something else. So he was all right, but he took it as a messenger from the beloved. So in this story, the man ran after the dog and with a jar of butter and said, "Oh Lord, you're eating your bread without butter." What tremendous faith Krishna Kishore had. He used to say, by chanting Om Krishna, Om Ram, one gets the result of 1,000,000 sandhyas. Once he said to me secretly, "I don't like the sandhya and other devotions anymore, but I don't tell anyone." So here the Sandhya means the evening, the morning and evening devotions that the Orthodox perform. There's a purification, and there's a prayer for illumination. There's a prayer that all of the sins of the day in the evening, all of the sins of the day we be washed free of them, and that in the morning all the sins of the night be washed free. So it's a way of cleansing our self-image every day. What the Roman Catholics and Orthodox Christians do by confession. And so in Hinduism, there was that practice, which has the same effect, to renew one's self-image every day, plus the praying the Gayatri for illumination. So Krishna Kishore said that if you chant the Om Krishna Om Rama, that has the merit of 1,000 sandhyas. Or 1,000,000 sandhyas is given here. Probably in the Bengali, it was either Lokha or Koti, one or the other. Once he said to me secretly, "I don't like the sandhya and other devotions anymore, but I don't tell anyone." So then Sri Ramakrishna continues, "Sometimes I feel that way too. The mother reveals to me that she herself has become everything. One day I was coming from the pine grove towards the Panchavati. A dog followed me. I stood still for a while near the Panchavati. The thought came to my mind that the mother might say something to me through that dog." So you see the wonderful state of mind of Sri Ramakrishna, that he saw God in everything. And when he saw the dog, for some reason, I'm sure he didn't do this every time he saw a dog, but in that moment, he had the feeling that the Divine Mother may speak to me through the dog. He doesn't say whether she did. He goes on to another topic, but he had the feeling that she might speak to him. And such a thing happened in his life all of the time. And that has happened in the lives of other saints as well, where God speaks through a variety of beings. It can be a person of very bad moral character who suddenly says words of wisdom to a saint, or an animal, or like in the case of St. Francis of Assisi, he was bowing before the crucifix in the church, St. Damian's in Assisi, and the crucifix spoke to him. And that a person whose spiritual consciousness has awakened, then they find that A message from the beloved can come in all kinds of ways. And so sometimes I too feel that way. The mother reveals to me that she herself has become everything. You were absolutely right when you said that through faith alone one achieves all. That is Sri Ramakrishna again speaking to Ishan. That you were absolutely right when you said that through faith alone one can achieve everything. Ishan, but we are householders. Master, what if you are? Through his grace, even the impossible becomes possible. Ram Prasad sang, "This world is a mere framework of illusion." But another man composed a song by way of reply, saying, "This very world is a mansion of mirth. Here I can eat, here drink and make merry." Janaka's might was unsurpassed. What did he lack of the world or the spirit? Holding to one as well as the other, he drank his milk from a brimming cup. So the idea King Janaka, the ideal king of course, Ramachandra was the ideal king from another standpoint, but Janaka, Rama was an incarnation of God, so it was exceptional. But Janaka, as far as a regular king, he's held up as the ideal of the person living in the world, because he was a king with all of the responsibilities of the royal duties, running a kingdom, etc. And yet he was a great saint who had realized God. And so he was able to, he had one foot in each world. And Sri Ramakrishna continues, one should first realize God through spiritual discipline, in solitude, and then live in the world. Only then can one be a King Janaka. What can you achieve otherwise? So again, Sri Ramakrishna would so often say this, that one needs to go into solitude from time to time in order to deepen one's meditation, in order to deepen one's sense of connection to God. Because when we're separated from our ordinary context, our ordinary emotional supports and everything, then it's easier to put the mind on God, easier to change our habits of thought and behavior. So he would often say this, that one should realize God through spiritual discipline and solitude, and then live in the world. He continues, further, take the case of Shiva. He has everything, Kartik, Ganesha, Lakshmi, and Saraswati. Still, sometimes he dances in a state of divine fervor, chanting the name of Rama, and sometimes he is absorbed in samadhi. So here he gives the example of the deity Shiva. So Shiva, of course, as we know, he's often pictured as meditating in a cremation ground, absorbed in meditation. Sometimes he's dancing in ecstasy. But then there's the Shiva of Kailasa, Shiva with Parvati and with his children, Ganesha and Kartik. And so here Sri Ramakrishna is using that aspect of Shiva, that here Shiva has everything. He has Parvati, he has children, he has a household. He lives in Kailas, which is his, so he has dominion over the earth, plus a divine family. And yet he still loses himself in ecstasy and in samadhi. So, and of course here, though it's not the main point, he says, he dances in a state of divine fervor, chanting the name of Rama. So that I like to bring up from time to time this interesting connection between Rama and Shiva, that you don't find in the life of Krishna. But in the life of Ram, though the worshippers of Rama are Vaishnavas, but there's a crossover with Shaivism there, because Shiva was Rama's guru and Rama was Shiva's guru. So Shiva chants the name of Ram and Ram chants the name of Shiva. And so the Vaishnava, the meeting of the Vaishnava and the Shaiva. So now we'll go to the next day. It's a new chapter, chapter 14 in the English Gospel, Introduction to Vaishnavas and Brahmos. And this is Sunday, the next day, September 23rd. We just were on September 22nd, Saturday, So this Sunday, the 23rd, 1883. Sri Ramakrishna was sitting in his room at Dakshineshwar with Rakal, M, and other devotees. Hazra sat on the porch outside. The master was conversing with the devotees. So again, Sri Ram, M giving a picture of the setting so that we can picture it in our minds. And as we find over and over again, Hazra is always sitting outside. Hazra is always on the porch. Once in a while, he comes in to say something to Sri Ramakrishna, but he's always seated out on the porch. Master to a devotee. Narendra doesn't like even you nowadays. To M, why didn't he come to see me at Adhar's house? So here Master says to a devotee, we have no idea who he said that to, who he was saying that Narendra doesn't like even you nowadays. It might have been that this is purely a guess based on no evidence, except for the fact that he was there. It could have been Rakal, because Rakal and Narendra had been very good friends. So when he says that he doesn't like even you nowadays, so what does that mean? Obviously, the person who, whether it was Rakal or someone else, it was somebody that normally would have been very dear to Narendra. But he says he doesn't like you, even you nowadays. So that doesn't mean that he had become a misanthrope, that he hated people. No, it meant that his mind was becoming so indrawn that he didn't like anyone's company. He wanted to keep his mind fixed and didn't like it drawn out by human company. So why didn't he come to see me at Adhar's house? How versatile Narendra is. He is gifted in singing, in playing on instruments, and in studies. He is independent and doesn't care about anybody. Captain begged Narendra to sit beside him, but he took a seat opposite. He didn't even look at Captain. So again, this is not an instruction on, this is not the Hindu version of Emily Post's instructions on polite behavior. This would generally be impolite anywhere. That Narendra, Captain says, oh, come, Naren, come sit next to me, and Naren intentionally goes and sits on the opposite side and won't even look at him. Ignores him completely. And so that's why many people, their first impression of Narendra at this time was not good. They thought that he was very haughty, he was egotistical, he didn't observe all those social niceties and so forth. But that's because Sri Ramakrishna realized that this wasn't an ordinary stubbornness or just a dislike for people because they didn't don't like people in general. But with Narendra, it was because his mind was indrawn and he was keeping it indrawn. He didn't want to be drawn out by people. And so he did what he did based on principle. Not just, oh, I don't like Captain, who cares about Captain? I like other people, but not him, so I'm not going to pay any attention to him. I'm not even going to look at him because I'm so angry at him. No, it had nothing to do with anger. It had nothing to do with dislike. It had everything to do with the fact that he wasn't going to be swayed by people's opinion from doing that which he was trying to do. That is his inner spiritual practice. What can a person achieve through mere scholarship? What is needed is prayer and spiritual discipline. Gauri of Indesh was both a scholar and a devotee. He was a worshipper of the Divine Mother. Now and then he would be overpowered with spiritual fervor. When he chanted a hymn to the Mother, the pundits would seem like earthworms beside him. I too would be overcome with ecstasy. So here's a beautiful passage. So what can one achieve through mere scholarship? That Sri Ramakrishna said over and over again. He had no use for panditya, just scholarship. The person like Gauri, who he's talking about, Gauri was one of the great scholars of the time that was brought to assess Sri Ramakrishna's spiritual status, and one of those who argued that Sri Ramakrishna was an incarnation of God. There was Vaishnav Charan, and then there was Gauri. Gauri, again, a great spiritual aspirant, and one who had attained to certain powers also, siddhis, though Sri Ramakrishna discouraged that, but he had attained to certain siddhis. And he was he was both a scholar and a spiritual aspirant. So that's why Sri Ramakrishna brings him up, that what can be achieved by mere scholarship. Gauri of Indesh was both a scholar and a great a man of great prayer and spiritual discipline. He was a worshiper of the Divine Mother and would be overpowered with spiritual fervor as he chanted. And it's interesting, Sri Ramakrishna says, and this sometimes we may be fortunate enough to see such things, a person who chants something or sings something and they're fully absorbed in what they're doing. So Sri Ramakrishna said when he would chant to the Divine Mother, pundits would look like earthworms. That is, one would feel that when Gauri was chanting, that this whole being was absorbed in the meaning and intention of the chant. Whereas mere pundits, they were just intellectual. They had memorized scriptures, they'd memorized commentaries, they could speak about all of the concepts and everything, but inwardly they had nothing. And so in the presence of Gauri, they looked like earthworms. And Sri Ramakrishna said he himself would be plunged into ecstasy hearing him chant. At first, Gauri was a bigoted worshiper of Shakti. He used to pick up tulsi leaves with a couple of sticks so as not to touch them with his fingers. All laugh. So tulsi is sacred to the Vaishnavas. So because Gauri was a Shakta, a worshiper of the Divine Mother, he didn't want to touch with his hands anything associated with the Vaishnavas, and so he'd pick up a tulsi with two sticks so he didn't have to touch it, which is extraordinary fastidiousness. So Sri Ramakrishna is not recommending that. He was saying that he had been such a bigoted worshiper of Shakti. So you see that among both the Vaishnavas towards Shaktism and the Shaktas towards Vaishnavism. And both sides, you see this disgust for each other. I sometimes tell the story of when I was back in the 1990s. Seems like it was around 1995, 94, 95, somewhere in there, when ISKCON was celebrating their 25th anniversary of their founding by Prabhupada. And so I was close to some of the leaders of ISKCON in San Diego, but they were leaders of more than just the San Diego area, the whole western states. So they invited me to their celebration. And it was a very nice celebration. I was glad to go and enjoy the celebration. But they had the famous singer from India, Hari Om Sharan, who sang bhajans. And I knew Hari Om Sharan, not personally, I'd never seen him, but we used to have an LP at Mayavati, which sometimes we would play. And so he was there. I did meet him there at the ISKCON meeting, talked to him. So he sang a number of songs to Krishna and the songs about Radha and so forth, Vaishnava songs. So after 45 minutes of singing songs, while we were all eating, there was a big, like in a banquet hall. Then he said, and now I've been singing so many songs about Sri Krishna and the love between Krishna and Radha. So let me now, just for variety, let me sing a song about Shiva. And so suddenly one of the leaders of the ISKCON, Badri Narayan, who's still a big leader in ISKCON, he jumped up and ran to the microphone to save the situation and said, so we've enjoyed so much Hari Om Sharan's songs to Krishna and Radha and the love between them and all of that. This was wonderful, wonderful. And now he says that he would like to sing a song about Shiva. But we know that Shiva was the greatest of the devotees of Sri Krishna. And so it will be okay to hear one or two songs about Shiva. So somehow he had to put it into context where Krishna was still here and Shiva was down here. And as long as people understand that, then we can listen to one or two songs about Shiva. So again, that sectarian spirit which comes into everything, even though it's quite contrary to the ancient tradition of Hinduism, from the Vedas all the way to modern times. The mainstream of Hinduism was the tendency of religious liberalism, the openness to all different religious traditions, and so forth. In fact, that I've seen that with my own eyes, not just the openness to all forms of Hinduism, but openness to other religions as well, even among remote, uneducated villagers. So, coming back to Gauri and to the text, Gauri was a was it? Yes, it was Gauri was a great devotee of Shakti, but he had been a bigoted worshipper of Shakti. So at first he was a bigoted worshipper of Shakti. He used to pick up tulsi leaves with a couple of sticks so as not to touch them with his fingers. All laugh. Then he went home. When he came back, he didn't behave that way anymore. He gave remarkable interpretations of Hindu mythology. He would say that the 10 heads, and he's again speaking of Gauri still, he would say that the 10 heads of Ravana represented the 10 organs, that is, the 10 sense organs, the organs of sense and the organs of action. 5 organs of sense, 5 organs of action. He would say that the 10 heads of Ravana represented the 10 organs. Kumbhakarna was the symbol of tamas, Ravana of rajas, and Bibhishana of sattva. That was why Bibhishana obtained favor with Rama. So here he doesn't explain what happened when he went home. He just says that Gauri had been a bigoted worshiper of Shakti. Then he went home, but when he returned, he didn't behave that way anymore. So who knows what happened, whether he had some experience, some revelation. Sri Ramakrishna doesn't explain it. Then the narrator continues. After the master's midday meal, while he was resting, Ram, Tarak, and some other devotees arrived from Calcutta. So Ram Chandra Datta, one of the great devotees of Sri Ramakrishna and a relative of Swami Vivekananda of Narendra, and the one who wrote the first biography of Sri Ramakrishna, Ramakrishna Jiban Britanta. And Tarak, who later became Swami Shivananda, one of the young devotees of Sri Ramakrishna, though he was older than all of the other monastic disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, except for Swami Advaitananda, Buru Gopal, Elder Gopal. He was much older than Tarak himself. He was older than Sri Ramakrishna. But among the other monastic disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, Tarak was the oldest, born in 1854. Whereas like Narendra and Rakal were born in 1863, some were born in 1864, etc. Nitya Gopal, Tarak, and several others were staying with Ram, a householder disciple of the master, there's Ramchandra Datta. Nitya Gopal was always in an exalted spiritual mood. Tarak's mind, too, was always endrawn. He seldom exchanged words with others. Ram looked after their physical needs. Rakal now and then spent a few days at Adhar's house. So let me just say a word about this, that Tarak's mind was always indrawn. He rarely exchanged words with others. That's something that in India you find it may not be understood, but there, if somebody doesn't say good morning to you or how are you when they first see you in the morning, nobody thinks anything of it. Here, because it's a social nicety, people expect you to say good morning when you first see them first thing in the day, and if you don't, they think, oh, something's wrong. Did I say something? Did I do something? In India, those things are not, which to me was a very good thing, because when you're living in an ashram and you want to keep your mind focused in everything, then you didn't have to, every time you pass somebody on the path, you don't have to look up and say, oh, good morning to you. How are you today, sir? And tip your hat. so forth. You just keep your mind absorbed and keep walking. And so Tarak, he didn't exchange words with others, and that means he normally wouldn't even salute others or anything. He'd just keep his mind focused. And so that would have been okay socially. It wouldn't be that people would be offended. With Narendra again, his was even stronger, and so there people might sometimes misunderstood, and they did. But with Tarak, it was just that he didn't exchange words. Ram to the master. We have been taking lessons on the drum. Master to Ram. Nitya Gopal too? Ram. No, sir, he plays a little. Master. And Tarak? Ram. He knows a good deal. Master. Then he won't keep his eyes on the ground so much. If the mind is much directed to something else, it doesn't dwell deeply on God. And so here, Sri Ramakrishna was saying about Tarak, because Tarak was always keeping his mind indrawn, but now if he goes into learning to play the drums, his mind will be externalized for doing that. And so Sri Ramakrishna obviously was not pleased. This doesn't mean that there's something wrong with learning to play the drum. It meant that Tarak was at such a stage where Sri Ramakrishna didn't like it for him. He didn't complain about others. He was not pleased, obviously, that Tarak was doing it, because it would mean that he who could keep his mind fixed on God, now he would be externalizing it. It's like Swami Ramakrishna, who was still Shashi at that time during Sri Ramakrishna's lifetime. He started studying Persian in order to read the Sufi poets. And Sri Ramakrishna heard about it, and he scolded him and said, if you do that, your mind will be taken away from seva, that is, service to the Guru. And so then Shashi Maharaj, Swami Ramakrishna, threw away his books, threw them in the Ganga. And so again, there's nothing wrong with learning Persian, nothing wrong with learning another language. That's good for many people, a good use for the mind. In fact, they say that that's a good way to keep the mind, in old age, a good way to keep the mind active, take up learning a new language or something like that. But for someone who has the ability to think about God, then Sri Ramakrishna didn't like them taking the mind, which they had the ability to dedicate it to God, away from God to think about other things, engaging in other things. So, Ram, I have been studying the drum only to accompany the kirtan. Master to him. I hear that you too are taking singing lessons. Is that so? M. No, sir. I just open my mouth now and then. So, Master, have you practiced that song? Oh, mother, make me mad with thy love. If you have, please sing it. The song expresses my ideal perfectly. But apparently he didn't sing it, because the conversation turned elsewhere. And so next time we'll start where the conversation turned elsewhere. So M, as we know, was very shy. And a number of times in the gospel, when Sri Ramakrishna asks him to say something, or asks him to sing along, or asks him to dance with the others, M won't do it. He remained in his humble posture of not doing anything in expressing himself in public. So it's not unusual that M would have just sat there when Sri Ramakrishna asked him to sing. So we'll stop here. And I'll give announcements, and then if there are any questions, I will take the questions. So for announcements, on Sunday, we will have a lecture on finding one's center of gravity. And also there will be arati on Sunday. We're not having arati after the classes as we did before the pandemic yet. But on Sundays, we will have arati. So there'll be the lecture, and then after the lecture, there will be the arati. And again, since day before yesterday, since Tuesday, we have been open to people coming here to the center for classes. And so we have a few people here today, as we had a few people on Tuesday. So on Sunday also, you're welcome to come if you've been fully vaccinated. We're asking that, and it's according to the honor system. You're not required to show a card, but we ask that only people who are fully vaccinated come to the in-person classes, and that you wear a mask while you are in the class for the comfort and safety of everyone. Gradually, as we're able, we'll reduce the restrictions. But for right now, we ask that you come with a mask. So next week, we will have the class on the Katha Upanishad at 7:30 p.m. In person allowed, but it will be live streamed. We'll continue live streaming all of our activities. And next Thursday, we'll continue with the gospel class. And so with that, let me see. There's Jiten had a question. Do you want to ask first? Oh, okay. This is what you're talking about. Okay. Can we compare meditation, prayers, and also seeing God in everyone and everything like our safety line to keep us from sinking completely into the daily duties and worldly things? Yes, certainly. Holy Mother said that daily meditation is like the rudder of a boat, which keeps the boat moving smoothly. You might think that, as you would say, we should practice meditation every day so that we can realize God. And yes, of course, that's the high eventual end of meditation. But people get discouraged if they think that the only purpose of meditation is to realize God, when we see that realization of God seems so far away. How can I go on practicing if it's so far away, and keep up daily enthusiasm to practice it? So Holy Mother said, no, there are other reasons for practicing it also, more immediate reasons. And one of those that she gave was, it's like the rudder of a boat, which keeps the boat going straight. So if we practice meditation every day, formal meditation, we sit down in a chair or on the floor in yoga posture or just in regular seated posture, whatever, and intentionally devote some time to just focusing the mind on God. Then that will, it serves as the anchor of the boat, meaning it keeps us going in the right direction. Because if every day we have that practice, then at least once a day, or if, even better, if we can do it twice a day, we have a meditation practice, then every day is affected by that practice. And so at the time when we practice meditation, even if we can't focus the mind, the very fact that the mind is restless and running around and thinking of other things, that itself lets us know what is affecting the mind, what is keeping the mind distracted. And so it gives us some feedback about ourselves. So yes, it is all of these things, the meditation and prayer, and trying to see God in everyone, interacting with the world, with the understanding that everything is God. Let me try to behave according to that. Even though I haven't seen it yet, let me try to behave according to that. Then that will help us greatly. So a very good question. So with that, I'll give the closing chant. Om Niranjanam Nityam Anantarupam Bhaktanukampa Dhrita Vigraham Vai Ishavataram Parameshamidyam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namama. We bow in adoration to Sri Ramakrishna, who is stainless, eternal, infinite, the worshipful Supreme Lord, who took birth, human birth, out of compassion for all. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat. Om Peace, peace, peace be unto us all.